The leather portfolio sat on Diane's glass coffee table like evidence at trial. Cousins and aunts filled her great room. I counted 18 faces, all of them avoiding mine. I wore clean Carhartt pants and my union polo. Everyone else looked like they worked in offices. They probably did. Diane stood by the fireplace, navy pantsuit perfect, holding the portfolio like a weapon. After 5 years of probate since Dad died in 2013, I can finally announce the settlement of our father's estate, she said. Her voice had that boardroom tone she used when talking to people she thought were stupid. The 12-property portfolio, currently valued at $8.9 million, has been distributed according to Dad's final wishes. She pulled out a document, cream paper, notary seal from 2012, witness signatures I didn't recognize. This codicil, executed in 2012, names me sole beneficiary and executor. Dad was very clear about his reasoning. Her eyes locked on mine. Carl's abandonment during his final years and his demonstrated inability to manage complex financial assets. My hands gripped the armrests. The wedding ring bit into my finger. Rebecca would have known what to say. "You're too stupid to deserve this," Diane said. Not shouted, just stated, like she was reading a quarterly report. I found my voice. "I want to see the original will, the one from '98. I remember watching Dad sign it. I was there. Your dead wife hoarded outdated paperwork. That's sad, Carl." "Rebecca kept everything," I said. "Every estate document Dad ever signed. Original wills, property deeds, trust amendments, all of them in our fireproof cabinet." Diane's hand went to her throat. The boardroom voice faltered. Mikhail leaned forward from the front row. 3 cousins exchanged glances. "What documents?" I stood. "I'll be consulting an attorney," pushed past silent cousins who wouldn't meet my eyes. None of them looked at me. All of them had heard her call me stupid. Ready for the video? Make sure you're subscribed. I joined IBEW Local 438 at 19. 2 years of community college studying electrical systems, then the apprenticeship application. Started in 1980 pulling wire through conduit at a Cleveland manufacturing plant, journeyman electrician by 1985. 39 years of steady work across Ohio industrial sites. Power distribution panels, motor control systems, emergency lighting installations. 60-hour weeks were common. 72 during plant shutdowns, when we had to rewire entire facilities in compressed timelines. Met Rebecca at a union fish fry in 1982. She was working the fundraiser for her elementary school, serving pierogies and kielbasa in a Stanislaus gymnasium. She'd rearranged the serving line so pierogies came first, kielbasa second, sauerkraut at the end. Nobody waited more than 3 minutes. The priest asked her to run the next fundraiser too. Married her 2 years later at 24. She was 22, already working as an administrative assistant at the school. We bought the Kenmore Ranch in 1989 for $47,000. Nothing fancy, 1,200 square feet, brick exterior, original 1960s metal cabinets in the kitchen. But it was ours. I worked double shifts to make the payments. Service calls every weekend. Rebecca managed the budget with the same precision she used for everything else, tracking every dollar in ledgers she kept in the kitchen drawer. Paid the mortgage off by 2004. We tried for kids. 3 miscarriages between 1987 and 1995. The first one devastated Rebecca, laid her up for weeks. The second made her quiet in a way that scared me. The third one happened on a Tuesday. I left the job site at Cleveland Hopkins, drove home, found her on the bathroom floor. We just held each other. After that, we stopped trying. Got closer instead of falling apart. Dennis Kowalczyk's marriage ended after their stillbirth. Ours didn't. Dad built his warehouse empire the same way I built our mortgage payoff. One property at a time, steady work compounded over decades. Started with a single 8,000 square foot facility on Industrial Parkway in 1975. Kept buying through the 80s and 90s until he owned 12 properties across Akron, Cleveland, and Erie. Nothing glamorous. Climate-controlled storage for auto parts distributors, medical supply companies, small manufacturers. He charged fair rent and maintained the buildings himself until his back gave out in the mid-90s. I helped him with electrical work sometimes, upgraded panel boxes, installed new lighting systems, troubleshot motor problems in the loading docks. He had this way of watching me work, not saying much, but nodding when I explained what I was doing. Found the ledger in 2007 while helping Dad move files to storage, right before his health declined. 1997. Entry in his block letter printing, all capitals, ruler straight lines. Talked to Carl about electrical systems. Smart kid. Should have asked him to partner up. Never saw that note while he was alive. He used to come to the Union Hall fish fries 3 or 4 times a year, quarterly tradition. He'd sit with Dennis Kowalczyk and the other tradesmen at the same corner table under the 1947 founding charter photo. Talked about steady work over pierogies and Budweiser. No business deals, no portfolio discussions, just guys who knew what it meant to build something with their hands. Diane went a different direction. Wharton School of Business, 1985 to 1987. Dad paid $89,000 for her MBA. She came back to Cleveland at 28 and joined his business in 1990. Modernized his operations, she said. Computerized the rental tracking. Hired property management firms instead of doing repairs in-house. Started aggressive acquisition campaigns, targeting undervalued industrial properties. The portfolio tripled in value under her management. Dad was proud of that, I think. His daughter, the business strategist. She had vision, everyone said. She saw opportunities he'd missed, understood market dynamics he'd never studied. Family gatherings followed a new pattern after she married Mikhail in 1995. Christmas dinners, Thanksgiving, 4th of July cookouts. Diane and Mikhail would talk about deals. Square footage, capitalization rates, tenant improvement allowances. Extended family would gather around them like they were watching something happen. Meanwhile, I'd sit on the deck with the younger cousins, talking about Browns games and keeping my mouth shut. Diane had mentioned restructuring Dad's holdings that week, made me wonder what records existed. I asked about a property acquisition at the 2009 Thanksgiving dinner. Diane was explaining some restructuring plan to the uncles. I wondered aloud about the electrical infrastructure costs she'd budgeted. You wouldn't understand the complexities, she said. Not mean, just matter of fact, like she was explaining to a child why they couldn't understand calculus yet. Different skill set. Mikhail nodded along. The conversation moved on. I went back to eating turkey. The narrative solidified over years. Diane inherited Dad's business mind. Carl inherited his work ethic. Clean division. Extended family absorbed it without question. Cousins started telling their kids to go to college so they wouldn't end up like Uncle Carl. Nobody meant it cruel, just how things were. Rebecca set down her dish towel one night after a 2010 Christmas gathering. We were in our kitchen, her hands covered in soap suds. You didn't say 10 words at dinner. What happened? I shrugged. Different skill set? That's not what I said. She dried her hands, went to the cabinet where she kept her files, color-coded folders with typed labels, estate documents, property deeds, tax records going back to 1990. Everything organized by date and category. I'd always found it excessive. This need to document everything, preserve every receipt and warranty card, but it made her feel secure, so I didn't argue. I'm keeping copies of your father's estate documents, she told me. The original will, the property ledgers, everything. You'll understand someday. In case of what? She looked at me for a long moment, pulled out a folder without looking, like she'd been planning this conversation. You'll understand someday. That conversation happened in 2010. 3 years later, everything changed. Rebecca got her ovarian cancer diagnosis in 2013, 51 years old. Stage 3, the doctor said. We had maybe 3 years with aggressive treatment. I worked 70-hour weeks to cover what insurance wouldn't pay. $47,000 in out-of-pocket costs between 2013 and 2016. Chemotherapy, radiation, medications that cost more than our first car. She worked until September 2015, then came home one afternoon and never went back. She spent that final year organizing her filing systems with increasing urgency, updating labels, cross-referencing documents, creating indexes for folders I didn't understand the purpose of. Her last week, hands shaking as she taped instructions inside the cabinet lid. Why are you keeping Dad's old property ledgers? I asked her once. 2015, maybe. She was filing something in the fireproof cabinet in our bedroom closet. Because they're needed. Diane has all the business records. Digital copies, probably. Rebecca's hands paused on the folder tab. I'm keeping them anyway. She never explained her suspicions, never told me she thought Diane might manipulate the estate, didn't want to cause family conflict, probably, didn't want me spending her final months fighting battles she wasn't certain needed fighting. She died in March 2016, 54 years old, 3 years after diagnosis. I held her hand in the hospice room while she slept through the morphine haze. Her wedding ring had slipped off her finger weeks before, too thin to hold it anymore. Her last words to me were about the filing cabinet. Everything you need is here, she whispered. Trust the system. I didn't know what she meant. Not then. Found the handwritten index card taped inside the cabinet lid a week after her funeral. Her neat printing on a 3x5 card. Everything you need is here. Trust the system. Top drawer contained hanging folders labeled Estate. 1998. Current. Property deeds. Tax records. 1990 and 2016. The original 1998 last will and testament sat in an archival plastic sleeve. 17 pages of cream-colored legal bond with Dad's signature and handwritten margin notes. I read it once, put it back, closed the cabinet, went to the basement and worked on restoring a 1952 Zenith radio until my hands stopped shaking. Rebecca had preserved something Diane assumed destroyed. Documentation of a life I built through steady work. Proof that Dad had valued both his children equally, despite what Diane's business success might suggest. She'd stood guard even while dying, protecting me from threats she recognized but never explained. I wish I'd understood while she was still alive. Wish I'd asked what she suspected, what made her preserve those documents with such urgency. But she'd kept silent to spare me conflict, and I'd accepted her silence because that's what we did. We protected each other. The filing cabinet sat in the closet for 2 more years. Dad's ledgers and estate documents gathering dust while I worked my shifts and came home to an empty house. I'd make dinner following Rebecca's annotated pierogi recipe, instructions precise as technical manuals. Spend evenings in the basement workshop restoring radios, finding peace in logical troubleshooting of old circuitry. Never thought I'd need what she'd saved. Never imagined Diane would forge documents and erase me from Dad's legacy. Rebecca saw it coming, though. Saw it and prepared, leaving evidence behind like breadcrumbs for when I'd finally need them. Everything you need is here. Trust the system. She'd been right. The filing cabinet sat upstairs, waiting. Dad got his dementia diagnosis at 76 in 2008. Forgot where he parked the truck at the grocery store. Asked me the same question about my work 3 times in 20 minutes. Called me by my uncle's name twice. Small things at first, then bigger ones. Diane moved fast. Within 2 months, she had durable power of attorney, full legal authority over everything Dad owned. She explained it at a Sunday dinner in March, speaking to the whole family gathered in Dad's dining room like she was announcing quarterly earnings. Dad and I agreed. This makes the most sense, she said, holding up the notarized document. Someone needs to handle the business decisions while he focuses on his health. Dad nodded from the head of the table. Looked relieved, actually, like she'd lifted a burden. I didn't object. Made sense. Diane had managed the properties for 18 years by then. Knew every tenant, every lease term, every maintenance contract. I knew how to wire a 3-phase panel and troubleshoot motor controls. Different skill sets. Started noticing changes during my visits. Every 2 months or so, I'd drive to Dad's house in the afternoon, sit with him in the living room, talk about work and weather. Safe topics. He'd mentioned, Diane told him, I was too busy with union obligations to visit more often. She said, you've got your hands full with job sites. He told me one Sunday in June 2008. Said not to bother you. I'm not too busy to visit. He looked confused. Diane said you called her. Said the work schedule was overwhelming. I hadn't called Diane about anything. Never did. Must have misunderstood, I said. He accepted that. Went back to talking about the Browns draft picks. The pattern continued. Every visit, Dad would mention something Diane had told him about my schedule, my commitments, my inability to visit more frequently. Small lies that built a narrative. Carl's too busy. Carl's overwhelmed with his own life. Carl doesn't have time for family obligations. I never corrected the record with Diane. Figured it was Dad's confusion mixing up details, dementia, scrambling timelines and conversations. Didn't occur to me she was planting false memories in a deteriorating mind. Thanksgiving 2009 changed things. Diane hosted at her Bracknell mansion. 18 family members crowded into the great room overlooking Lake Erie. She'd been talking about restructuring the property portfolio, consolidating management fees, upgrading systems across all 12 buildings. I mentioned the electrical infrastructure costs. You wouldn't understand the complexities, she said. Stated like a fact she'd already verified. Different skill set. Mikhail nodded. Commercial real estate requires sophisticated financial analysis. It's not like residential work. The uncles went back to their drinks. Nobody questioned it. I sat there with my beer, watching everyone absorb the message. Diane handles the business thinking. Carl handles the manual labor. Clean division. Christmas 2010 happened in the same room. Diane was handing out gifts to extended family, making a show of it. She gave Mikhail a Tag Heuer watch in a leather box, held it up so everyone could see the platinum band. Gave my cousin Jennifer a spa package worth $300, according to the certificate she read aloud. Then she handed me a small envelope. Figured you'd prefer something practical, she said. $50 Visa gift card. I turned it over once, slid it in my pocket. The kitchen was quieter than the great room. The hierarchy was becoming formalized. Expensive gifts for people Diane considered worth impressing. Practical minimum for the blue-collar brother who worked with his hands. Father's Day 2A2. Dad mentioned updating his estate plan. We were sitting on his porch in the afternoon heat, drinking iced tea. He'd just finished talking about property values, how the portfolio had grown to $8.9 million under Diane's management. Thinking about simplifying the inheritance structure, he said, "Make things cleaner for you kids." Diane appeared from inside the house before I could respond. "Dad, you promised we'd talk about that later," she said, voice light but firm. "Let's not bore everyone with estate planning details on Father's Day." She steered the conversation to his upcoming doctor's appointment. Got him talking about his medication schedule instead. Later, when I was leaving, she caught me by my truck. "Dad wants everything simplified," she told me. "Less burden on you. You've got Rebecca to worry about. Your job, all that overtime you're pulling. He doesn't want you stressed about property management." My shoulders dropped. One less thing to figure out. One less responsibility I'd probably screw up anyway. Rebecca had been warning me about something. Vague concerns I hadn't understood. But this seemed reasonable. "Whatever makes sense," I said. Her smile looked genuine. "Exactly. Family takes care of family. You focus on your work. I'll handle the business side." Everything about it seemed reasonable. 2012 changed the pattern. Diane moved Dad to Shaker Heights assisted living that spring, memory care wing with monitored access and staff trained in dementia management. She controlled the visitor logs, scheduled approved visiting hours, coordinated with the nurses about optimal times for guests. She scheduled my visits for late afternoon, every 8 weeks or so. The schedule, Diane said, worked best with the facility's routines. The facility staff would buzz me in, point me toward Dad's room, remind me not to upset him with complicated topics. Dad rarely remembered the visits. He'd be confused when I arrived, asking who I was sometimes, other times recognizing me but uncertain why I was there. The nurses had a word for it: sundowning. His worst time of day was when I visited. "That's normal," they said. Not her fault. I'd sit in the armchair beside his bed, talk about simple things, the weather, what I'd had for breakfast, safe topics that wouldn't strain his failing memory. He'd nod along, sometimes respond, sometimes just stare at the window. I'd later learn from the facility records that Diane visited 3 times a week, came in the mornings when Dad was most alert, brought paperwork for him to review, business matters that needed his signature. The staff noted her dedication in the visitor log. Family member providing consistent support through difficult transition. The financial exploitation started that same year. I didn't know it then, wouldn't know for 7 more years. But Diane was systematically moving rental income from the First Merit business account to personal accounts she controlled. 8,200 monthly labeled as management fees, 15,000 quarterly labeled as improvement costs. Between 2012 and Dad's death in 2013, then continuing through estate administration until 2019, $5.6 million transferred through unauthorized movements I had no visibility into. I was working 70-hour weeks covering Rebecca's medical bills. $47,000 in out-of-pocket cancer treatment costs between her diagnosis in 2013 and her death in 2016. Chemotherapy, radiation, medications that cost more than our mortgage payment. I took every overtime shift the union hall offered, double time on weekends, triple time on holidays. All those double shifts, all those bills. The rental income could have covered it 10 times over. I never knew to ask. Dad died January 2013 at 81. Heart failure, the doctor said, in his sleep. Diane organized the funeral at Sunset Memorial, Catholic service with full mass. She delivered the eulogy standing at the podium in a black Armani suit, speaking about his vision and business acumen. My father built an empire through dedication and strategic thinking, she told the gathered mourners. He taught me the importance of stewardship, of protecting what you build, of ensuring your legacy continues through capable hands. She talked about modernizing his operations, growing the portfolio, honoring his memory through continued success, mentioned his properties by name, recited their current valuations, spoke about expansion plans that would triple the holdings within a decade. She mentioned me once. My brother Carl worked hard in his own way, she said. Dad appreciated honest labor, valued the people who built his buildings even if they didn't run them. I sat in the front pew between Rebecca and Dennis Kowalczyk, heard the words. Didn't register what they meant until 3 days later when I was cleaning out his workshop. She talked about vision and legacy, something about honest work. I stopped listening after that. The probate letter arrived 6 weeks after Dad's death. Law firm letterhead, single page, typed notification that probate proceedings had been opened. Diane served as executor. Initial inventory to follow. My presence not required for filing proceedings, but would be notified of major developments. 5 years that probate would remain open. I didn't know that then, just knew the lawyers were handling it. Diane was managing the process. Everything was being done according to Dad's wishes. I read it once, filed it in Rebecca's blue folder for historical estate records. Went back to the garage to finish the electrical panel I was rebuilding. Never questioned it. Saturday, May 12, 2018, 5 years and 4 months since Dad died. Diane's mansion sat on 2 acres of Brattonall lakefront, the kind of property that made the real estate sections of Cleveland Magazine. I parked my F-150 between a Lexus and a BMW, walked up the curved driveway. Clean Carhartt pants, union polo, work clothes. 18 family members had already gathered by the time I arrived. Cousins I saw at funerals, aunts who sent Christmas cards, Uncle Mike who'd retired from the phone company, all of them in slacks and button-downs, business casual for a Saturday afternoon. The Carhartt pants were clean but faded from 100 washings. The union polo's collar had started to fray. The great room had vaulted ceilings with exposed beams, floor-to-ceiling windows framing gray Lake Erie and the private beach below. Leather furniture arranged in a semicircle facing the fireplace where Diane stood holding a leather portfolio. Coffee and pastries sat untouched on the sideboard. Nobody was here to eat. Diane wore a navy pantsuit with a statement necklace, her hair professionally styled. She stood silent until the last conversation died and everyone turned toward her. After more than 5 years of probate since Dad passed in January 2013, I can finally announce the settlement of our father's estate. Her voice had that boardroom edge, each word measured. The 12-property portfolio, currently valued at $8.9 million, has been distributed according to Dad's final wishes. She opened the portfolio, pulled out a document. Cream-colored paper with a notary seal visible from where I sat. This codicil, executed in March 2012, names me sole beneficiary and executor. She held it up for everyone to see. Dad stated his reasoning in this document. The leather armrest creaked under my grip. My wedding ring bit into my finger. The document cites Carl's abandonment during our father's final years. She looked directly at me, and his demonstrated inability to manage complex financial assets. Cousins shifted in their seats. Uncle Mike studied his coffee cup. Nobody met my eyes. "You're too stupid to deserve this," Diane said, not shouted, just stated, like she was reading an inventory list. "Dad knew you'd waste it on tools and old radios." Someone's coffee cup clinked against a saucer. Otherwise, silence. Mikhail leaned forward from his front row position, nodding along. Business requires sophistication, not blue-collar sentimentality. I found my voice. "I want to see the original will from 1998, the one Rebecca kept copies of." "Your dead wife hoarded outdated paperwork?" Diane's hand adjusted the portfolio. "That's sad, Carl. Dad executed a new codicil in 2012 with proper legal counsel. Not some filing cabinet nonsense. Rebecca kept everything." The words came out steady. "Every estate document Dad signed, original wills, property deeds, trust amendments, all of them in archival sleeves with typed labels." Diane's hand went to her throat. Her eyes tightened at the corners for half a second. Then the smile returned, too wide. "What documents?" Mikhail's voice had an edge. I stood. The leather chair creaked. "I'll be consulting an attorney." I walked the curved driveway, each step longer than the last. Past cousins who studied their laps. Past Aunt Marie, who suddenly needed something from her purse. Past Uncle Mike, still examining his coffee like it contained answers. Nobody looked at me. All of them had heard her call me stupid in front of witnesses. My truck sat between the same Lexus and BMW. I climbed in. The key slipped from my hand, bounced off the running board. I picked it up, tried again, drove home with the radio off, replaying her voice on loop. "You're too stupid to deserve this. Dad knew you'd waste it." Pulled into my driveway 25 minutes later. Sat in the truck, watching the sun drop behind the Kenmore Ranch Rebecca and I had bought in 1989. Paid off by 2004 through double shifts and her careful budgeting. Inside, the kitchen smelled like the cleaning solution I'd used that morning. No coffee brewing, no radio playing the oldies station Rebecca kept on while she cooked. Just empty counters and the hum of the refrigerator. I pulled out Rebecca's recipe box from the cabinet beside the stove, found the pierogi card with her handwritten notes in the margins, Depression-era butter ratios, exact pan temperatures, humidity adjustments for different seasons, measured flour into the mixing bowl, 2.5 cups, leveled with the back of a knife the way she'd taught me, added eggs, sour cream, salt, mixed until the dough came together in a soft ball. Her note said, "Rest 30 minutes," written in blue ink, underlined twice. I set the timer and started the filling. Potatoes boiled while I diced onions. Cottage cheese measured to the 1/4 cup. Her annotation about moisture content depending on brand. I used the same Friendship dairy she'd preferred, no need to adjust. The mechanical process steadied my hands. Roll the dough, cut circles with the glass tumbler, spoon filling, pinch edges, drop in boiling water. 3 minutes until they float. Rebecca's system worked like a circuit diagram. Follow each step in sequence. Verify your work. Move to the next connection. Something broken becomes something fixed. I ate 4 pierogies at the kitchen table, staring at the wallpaper she'd hung in 1994. Tiny blue flowers on cream background. She'd spent a weekend measuring and cutting, making sure the pattern matched at every seam. Everything you need is here. Trust the system. The fireproof cabinet sat upstairs in the bedroom closet. Rebecca's color-coded folders with typed labels. Estate, 1998 current. Property deeds. Tax records, 1990 to 288. The original last will and testament in its archival plastic sleeve. I washed my plate, dried it, put it back in the cabinet where it belonged. Monday morning, I'd call the union hall, ask Dennis who he'd recommend for probate cases. Find an attorney who handled estate disputes. Show them what Rebecca had preserved. For now, I turned off the kitchen light, climbed the stairs to bed. I climbed the stairs Monday morning, still wearing Saturday's clothes. The bedroom smelled stale. Dust patterns marked where Rebecca's lotion bottles had sat on the dresser. I opened the closet. The fireproof cabinet sat behind winter coats Rebecca never threw away. Beneath the shelf holding shoeboxes full of photos I hadn't looked at since her funeral. Gray metal. 2 drawers. Combination lock on the front. I pulled it out, set it on the bed. Dust marked where it had rested against the wall for 2 years. The combination was my birth year. Die E. 60. 4 clicks right, 3 left, 2 right. Yes. 1. The lock opened. Inside the lid, a 3x5 index card taped to the metal. Rebecca's handwriting in blue ink, each letter formed with the precision she'd used for everything. Everything important is here. Trust the system. The top drawer held hanging folders in colors she'd assigned meaning to. Green for current documents, blue for historical records, red for legal papers requiring action. Each folder had a typed label organized by date and category. Estate 1998 current sat in front. Red folder. I pulled it out. The original last will and testament filled an archival plastic sleeve. 17 pages of cream-colored paper, heavier stock than copy paper. Jacobson and Associates seal embossed at the top of each page. Dad's signature on page 17 in black ink, dated March 1998. 2 paralegals witnessed it. Notary seal raised and clear. I read page 7 twice. The property distribution section specified equal division between Carl Hendricks and Diane Hendricks Volkoff. 50% each. 12 properties split down the middle with detailed descriptions of how to handle indivisible assets, what happened if one child predeceased the other, provisions for dispute resolution. In the right margin, Dad's handwriting in block letters with a ballpoint pen. Carl works harder than anyone I know. I set the page down on the bed, smoothed the plastic sleeve flat. Behind the will, Rebecca had filed Dad's property ledgers. 12 composition notebooks spanning 1975 to 2010, each one documenting acquisitions, tenants, repairs, rental income. His block printing filled every page. Notes about building something to leave the kids, both of them. References to conversations with me about electrical systems, suggestions I should have partnered with him. She'd also kept the 2012 codicil, the document Diane had shown everyone Saturday. I laid them side by side on the bed. Original will on the left, codicil on the right, different paper. The will used heavy cream stock with visible texture. The codicil was standard white laser paper, smooth and thin. Different typeface, too. The will had serif fonts, professional legal formatting. The codicil used Arial, spacing slightly off. Dad's signature on the codicil looked shakier. The P in Hendricks wobbled where his 1998 signature had been firm. The tail on the S curved wrong. I found the magnifying glass in the nightstand drawer. Studied both signatures under the lamp. The codicil signature had uniform pressure throughout, like someone had traced it slowly. The original showed variation, heavier strokes on downward movements, lighter on upward curves. Natural writing patterns. I took photos of both documents with my phone, texted Dennis before I could second guess it. Need that probate attorney recommendation. Soon as possible. His reply came 3 minutes later. Donald Morrison handled my cousin's estate fraud case. Give him my name. The IBEW credit union opened at 9 on Mondays. I drove there at 8:30, waited in the parking lot until the manager unlocked the doors. Inside, I filled out a withdrawal slip for $12,000. Checked my balance on the receipt. $6,400 left in savings. Emergency fund nearly gone. The teller counted out bills in hundreds, asked if I wanted them in an envelope. That works. Morrison's office was in a renovated warehouse downtown, 3rd floor with river views. His receptionist scheduled me for that afternoon at 2. Retainer was $12,000 for estate contest cases. I handed over the envelope. That afternoon, I spread the documents across Morrison's conference table. He was 56, gray suit, reading glasses that he adjusted while examining each page. "This will is clean," he said after 20 minutes. "Proper execution, witnessed correctly, notarized with a raised seal." Standard estate language for the era. He picked up the codicil, studied it for 5 minutes without speaking. Different paper stock. "I noticed that," I said. "The notarization concerns me." He pulled out his phone, took photos of the notary seal. "Linda Vasquez certified this March 14th, 2012 at 2:47 p.m. in Cleveland, according to the timestamp." "Is that unusual?" "Depends on what else she notarized that day." He wrote something on a legal pad. The 4-month contest deadline passed 5 years ago in 2013, but fraudulent concealment extends the timeline if you can prove the fraud was actively hidden from you. Diane told me the estate was settled. Sent 1 letter saying probate was complete. Morrison nodded. "That could qualify. But we need proof the codicil itself is fraudulent, not just concealed." "How do we get that?" "Notary records are public in Ohio. Every notarization gets logged with location, timestamp, document type. If Vasquez's log shows something that contradicts this codicil, we have grounds." I drove to the Cuyahoga County Courthouse that afternoon. The records office was in the basement. Fluorescent lights and bulletproof glass partitions. A woman in her 50s sat behind the glass reading something on her computer. "Help you?" "I need notary records for Linda Vasquez. March 14, 2012. She typed without looking up. Waited for something to load. What document?" "Any documents she notarized that day." Her eyes moved across the screen. 3 entries at Akron Municipal Court, timestamps 2:30 p.m. 1 estate codicil in Cleveland, timestamp 2:47 p.m. My chest tightened. "Can you verify the Akron location?" She clicked something. Courthouse security logs show her signing in at the clerk's office 2:15 p.m., signing out 3:10 p.m. She certified 3 foreclosure documents for Judge Morrison's chambers. How far is Akron Municipal Court from Cleveland? 47 miles, maybe 50 depending on the route. 17 minutes to drive 47 miles. Even if she'd left immediately after certifying the foreclosures at 2030, she couldn't have reached Cleveland by 2047. Can I get copies of those records? Public information. $5 per page. I paid $20. Walked out with the notary log entries showing timestamps, locations, case numbers for the Akron foreclosures. 2 days later, after I brought him the notary records, Morrison filed the will contest, August 15, 2018. Formal petition citing forgery based on notarization impossibility. Discovery demands served to Diane's current attorney the same day. 3 weeks passed. I worked my shifts, came home to an empty house, checked my phone every hour for updates that didn't come. September 6th, unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Mr. Hendricks? This is Amanda Chen. I handled your father's estate portfolio from 2010 to 2016. I sat down at the kitchen table. What can I do for you? I saw the will contest filing, the notarization discrepancy you cited. I noticed that same problem in 2015 during a routine portfolio review. You noticed it 3 years ago? I raised concerns with Diane. She dismissed it as overthinking technicalities. When I suggested independent authentication, she terminated my services. No tremor, no hesitation, just facts. I've spent 3 months deciding whether to contact you. Attorney-client privilege doesn't cover fraud, but I could still face bar complaints. Why are you calling now? Because the notarization isn't just suspicious. It's impossible. Linda Vasquez couldn't have been in both locations. I pulled her complete log from that week. 43 certifications. Every single one logged with location, timestamp, document type. Except this codicil has a Cleveland timestamp while she was in Akron Municipal Court certifying foreclosure documents. Security footage confirms it. Sign-in sheets confirm it. Case files confirm it. I gripped the phone tighter. You have all that documentation? I kept copies when Diane fired me. Ethical gray area, but I had concerns about the broader pattern. What pattern? She pressured me to backdate documents on at least 4 other occasions. Property transfers that needed earlier execution dates for tax purposes. Lease amendments she wanted, filed retroactively. I refused each time. That's why she fired me. We met at a coffee shop downtown the next morning. She wore a gray suit, wire-rimmed glasses, carried a worn leather briefcase. She spread the notary log across the table between us. Vasquez's entries in chronological order. March 11th through March 17th, 2012. 43 total certifications. Every entry showed location. Akron Municipal Court, Cleveland Probate Court, Shaker Heights Law Office. Each one, except the Hendricks codicil, matched other documentation proving the notary's physical presence. The codicil entry exists, Amanda said, but she was in Akron at 2030 certifying foreclosures. The security camera footage shows her leaving the courthouse at 3:10 p.m. There's no way she reached Cleveland by 2047 to certify this document. Can you testify to this? I can provide an affidavit, testify if needed. I know the professional risks. She closed the briefcase. My father came here from Taiwan because he believed American law was supposed to be impartial, not about who pays better. If I stay silent about obvious fraud, what's the difference between here and the system he left? Morrison filed an amended complaint September 12th with Amanda's affidavit attached. Physical impossibility of dual location notarization, pattern of document manipulation, expert witness testimony available. I drove home that night thinking about Rebecca's index card. Everything important is here. Trust the system. She'd known. Preserved the evidence. Left it where I'd find it when the time came. The filing cabinet sat back in the closet now, combination locked. But the documents were with Morrison, building a case that couldn't be dismissed or ignored. Mathematical impossibility. 47 miles in 17 minutes. Truth that couldn't be argued away. I arrived at the courthouse 3 hours early. The building sat on Lakeside Avenue, stone facade, dark with February rain. Wind cut through the entrance plaza, scattering cigarette butts and abandoned coffee cups. I parked my F-150 in the public lot, fed the meter enough quarters for 4 hours, walked through the metal detector at 9:15 a.m. for a noon hearing. The waiting area had hard plastic chairs bolted to the floor. Lawyers in Brooks, Brothers and Hugo Boss moved past security carrying leather briefcases, nodding to bailiffs who waved them through without opening bags. I sat near the window watching them, my sport coat borrowed from Dennis pulling tight across the shoulders. Morrison arrived at 33, briefcase in one hand, coffee in the other. Steam rose from the paper cup. "You've been here a while," he said. "Wanted to be early. Court doesn't convene until noon." "I know." He sat beside me, reviewed documents from his briefcase without speaking. We stayed like that until 11,045 when the bailiff opened Courtroom 12C. The room had wood paneling and fluorescent lights, raised judge's bench at the front, witness stand positioned so the gallery could see clearly. Air conditioning hummed. I took a seat at the plaintiff's table beside Morrison. My hands gripped the armrests. Diane entered at 11,048 with 2 attorneys from a downtown firm I'd seen advertised on billboards. She wore a charcoal suit, statement necklace, carried herself like she was walking into a board meeting. Mikhail followed, took a front row seat in the gallery, gave her a confident nod. She didn't look at me. Judge Patricia Moreland entered at noon exactly. Her bailiff stood. We rose. She settled into the bench chair, adjusted her reading glasses, opened the case file without looking up. Mid-60s, gray hair pulled back. The bailiff called us to order. Morrison stood. "Your Honor, we're here to contest the 2012 codicil that superseded Victor Hendricks Sr.'s 1998 last will and testament." "We have evidence the codicil was forged." He laid the original will on the clerk's desk. 17 pages, cream-colored paper, embossed law firm seal. Page 7 specifies equal distribution between Carl Hendricks and Diane Hendricks-Volkov. 50% each. Witnessed by 2 paralegals, properly notarized with a raised seal. He pointed to the margin. Victor Hendricks Sr.'s handwritten note here reads, "Carl works harder than anyone I know." Judge Moreland examined the page. Morrison continued, "The disputed codicil claims to supersede this will, naming Diane sole beneficiary. It was allegedly notarized by Linda Vasquez on March 14, 2012, at 2:47 p.m. in Cleveland." He placed the notary log on the desk. Mas Vasquez's official records show she certified 3 foreclosure documents in Akron Municipal Court at 2:30 p.m. that same day. Courthouse security footage, sign-in sheets, and case file timestamps confirm her physical presence there. He paused. Akron is 47 miles from Cleveland. She signed out of the courthouse at 2:52 p.m. There's no way she reached Cleveland by 2047 to certify this codicil. Diane's lead attorney stood. Your Honor, this could be a clerical error in the timestamp. We have 6 other documents, Morrison said, handled by Mrs. Chen, the estate attorney Diane employed from 2010 to 2016. All show similar timestamp irregularities when Mrs. Chen questioned their authenticity. Judge Moreland leaned forward. Call your first witness. Dr. Sarah Chen from the State Forensics Lab testified for 20 minutes about paper stock analysis. The codicil used standard laser paper manufactured after 2008. Victor's legal documents from that era all used heavier cotton bond. The signature showed tremor patterns consistent with his Parkinson's progression, but the stroke pressure analysis indicated tracing rather than natural signing motion. Amanda Chen took the stand next. Wire-rimmed glasses, gray suit. She set her leather briefcase beside the witness chair without looking at Diane. You handled the Hendricks estate from 2010 to 2016? Morrison asked. Correct. Did you notice irregularities in the 2012 codicil? During a 2015 portfolio review, I flagged the notarization timestamp. It didn't match other records from that week. Her voice stayed level. I raised concerns with Diane Hendricks Volkoff. She dismissed them as overthinking technicalities. What happened when you suggested independent authentication? She terminated my services. Did Mrs. Hendricks Volkoff pressure you to backdate documents on other occasions? 4 times. Property transfers that needed earlier execution dates for tax purposes. Lease amendments filed retroactively. I refused each time. Diane's attorney cross-examined for 15 minutes, trying to establish Amanda's bias after termination. Amanda provided dates, document numbers, specific conversations. Her testimony didn't shift. Dennis Kowalczyk took the stand at 1030. Early 70s, wearing his best suit, hands folded in his lap. You knew Victor Hendricks Sr.? Morrison asked. 30 years. We worked the same job sites in the 80s, stayed friends after I retired. Did you attend Union Hall events with him? Friday night fish fries. Victor came quarterly from 1998 until his dementia got bad around 2010. We'd sit at the same corner table. Did he discuss his estate plans? Dennis nodded. Talked about it every time. Said he was leaving the properties to both kids 50-50. Carl works harder than anyone, he'd say. Both kids get half. That's fair. Did he mention Carl abandoning him during his final years? Never. Victor was proud of Carl's trade work, talked about how his son could wire anything. Dennis paused, swallowed. That's a lie. He looked directly at Diane for the first time. Diane's attorney attempted to discredit Dennis as a biased friend, but the old man's testimony held. He'd been there. He'd heard Victor's words directly. Judge Moreland called a 15-minute recess at 2 p.m. I sat in the truck for 10 minutes after Morrison left, engine running, watching courthouse workers return from lunch. When we reconvened, Diane's lead attorney argued the codicil represented Victor's evolved judgment about asset management competence. Miss Hendricks Volkoff, Judge Moreland said, can you explain how your father's signature was notarized in Cleveland while the notary was physically in Akron? Diane stood. I don't recall the specifics of that day, Your Honor. Perhaps there was a clerical error, and the 4 instances of backdated documents Mrs. Chen testified about, I don't recall pressuring her about that. Morrison placed 6 additional documents on the clerk's desk: property transfers, lease amendments, trust modifications. Each one showed suspicious timestamps, each one handled by Amanda during her employment. "These establish a pattern," Morrison said. Judge Moreland removed her reading glasses. "I've presided over probate cases for 19 years. This is exploitation of a dementia patient by sophisticated actors who absolutely should know better." She turned to the court reporter. "The 2012 codicil is invalid. I'm reinstating the 1998 last will and testament as the controlling document. I'm ordering a comprehensive forensic accounting of all estate transfers since 2012. The gavel came down once. "I'm also referring this case to the Ohio Attorney General's office for multi-county fraud investigation." Color drained from Diane's cheeks. She gripped the table edge. Her attorneys gathered papers without speaking. The gallery started to empty. Mikhail stood abruptly, chair scraping. He walked out without looking back, letting the courtroom door slam. I shook Morrison's hand. "Thank you," I said. He nodded. "The accounting will take months, but the will's reinstated. That's the important part." Then I drove to Hillside Cemetery, parked near the west entrance, walked through bare trees to Rebecca's headstone, simple granite with just her name and dates, facing east toward morning sun. The ground was frozen. I sat anyway. "You protected me," I told her. "The filing cabinet, the index card, everything you preserved while you were dying. You saw what was coming, and you saved everything I needed." The wind moved through branches overhead. No answers. Just the quiet of a February afternoon and the knowledge that she'd been right. Everything important is here. Trust the system. I stayed until my hands went numb, then drove home. 5 weeks passed. The court-ordered forensic accounting took longer than Morrison predicted. The forensic accounting report arrived March 27, 2019. 147 pages documenting every unauthorized transfer Diane had made since 2012. Each line item a theft I'd worked, double shifts to cover. $5.6 million moved from the Hendricks Properties LLC operating account to personal accounts Diane controlled. 8,200 monthly labeled as management fees, 15,000 quarterly labeled as improvement costs. The pattern held for 84 months straight. Morrison called that afternoon. "The judge wants a settlement conference before she rules on damages. You can accept whatever Diane offers, or we proceed to full judgment." "What's she offering?" "Nothing yet. Her attorneys are still reviewing the accounting." I drove to Morrison's office the next week. Diane sat across the conference table in a gray suit that looked like it cost more than my truck. Her attorneys flanked her, briefcases open, legal pads covered in notes. "My client is willing to negotiate a structured settlement," her lead attorney said. "Payment plan over 10 years at 3% interest." Morrison didn't look up from his notes. "Your client stole $5.6 million from my client's inheritance, plus 7 years of rental income he should have received. That's another $1.97 million. Diane's hand went to her necklace. "I managed those properties. I tripled their value. You forged documents and stole from your brother. Judge Moreland's already ruled on that. Now we're just calculating damages." The settlement conference lasted 90 minutes. Diane's attorneys proposed payment deferrals, asset transfers, complicated restructuring that would take years to resolve. Morrison kept returning to the same number, $6.54 million. Half the portfolio value plus 7 years back, rent plus my attorney fees. We left without agreement. Judge Moreland issued her ruling April 12th. The judgment awarded Carl his rightful inheritance share of $4.45 million, $1.97 million in back rental income, and $127,000 in attorney fees. Total judgment, $6.54 million against Diane personally. The order gave her 90 days to satisfy the judgment or face contempt proceedings. By mid-June, Diane had liquidated 4 properties from her personal portfolio. Sales happened fast, prices below market. $2.1 million in proceeds went directly to the court-supervised escrow account. She sold her investment accounts next, another $890,000. The Bracknell mansion required different handling. She'd bought it in 2008 for $2.3 million, still owed $900,000 on the mortgage. A cash-out refinance, hold $1.2 million in equity, sent her monthly payment from $6,800 to $14,200. The math still left her $2.35 million short. Her bankruptcy filing hit the docket November 8, 2019. Chapter 7. Personal assets insufficient to satisfy civil judgment. The mansion went into foreclosure 3 months later when she couldn't make the new payment. Meanwhile, Cuyahoga County prosecutor filed charges June 2019. 2 counts, probate fraud, 4th-degree felonies. 3 counts, forgery, 1 count theft from a person in a protected class. Victor's dementia, making it an aggravated offense. Diane's criminal defense attorney negotiated a plea March 2020. No contest to all charges. Recommended sentence of 18 months at Ohio Reformatory for women plus 5 years probation. $247,000 in restitution beyond the civil judgment. Judge Moreland accepted the plea but added conditions. Permanent suspension of Diane's real estate developer license. Mandatory reporting to the state bar regarding attorney misconduct in the estate case. Professional sanctions that would follow her past the prison term. Commercial Real Estate Development Association expelled Diane 2 weeks after the criminal charges filed. The expulsion letter arrived at her attorney's office June 18th. Her existing joint ventures with Mikhail and other developers invoked morality clauses, forcing immediate buyouts at significant losses. Partners who'd praised her aggressive acquisition strategies now distanced themselves, citing reputational concerns. Mikhail filed for divorce November 2020, while Diane was serving her sentence. Irreconcilable differences, the petition said. He'd already moved to Chicago with a woman he'd met at an industry conference. His Facebook page showed them in front of a new development project. No mention of his imprisoned wife. The extended Hendricks family fractured along predictable lines. Cousins who'd sat silent during the mansion, humiliation, now avoided Diane completely. Aunt Marie sent a card to my house with a handwritten apology for not speaking up that day. Uncle Mike called once, asked if I'd consider attending the next family gathering, said things would be different now. I went to Victor's grave instead, stood by the headstone Dennis and I had placed beside Mom's plot. Told Dad about the judgment, the restitution, the criminal conviction. The words came easier than I expected. The plain dealer ran the story on page 3 of the Metro section. Local electrician wins 6.5 meters estate fraud case. The headline called it Blue-Collar Justice. Detailed how a union tradesman had exposed his MBA sister's 7-year theft scheme. Channel 5 picked it up for the evening news. ran a 30-second segment with my unioned photo and a shot of the courthouse. Dennis brought the newspaper to the Union Hall, posted it on the bulletin board beside the safety notices and job listings. Someone added a handwritten caption, "One of ours wins." The fish fry happened 3 weeks later. Dennis organized it, sent word through the apprenticeship network and the retiree list. 90 members showed up on a Friday night in August, filled the folding tables under the 1947 founding charter photo where Dad used to sit. They'd set up a corner table for me, same spot Dad had claimed during his quarterly visits. Dennis brought me a plate of pierogies and kielbasa, set down a Budweiser without asking. Your old man would be proud. I looked around the room at the journeymen and apprentices, the retired members who'd worked the same job sites I had. These were the people who understood what steady work meant, who knew the difference between building something and just collecting from it. The Bratenall mansion sold at auction for $1.8 million in January 2021, 53% of what Diane had refinanced it for. The buyer was a developer from Columbus who planned to subdivide the lakefront property. Diane's business biography collection went to an estate liquidator in March. First editions of Rockefeller, Carnegie, Walton, the books she'd quoted to justify decisions. The estate liquidator sold them March 2021. Carnegie's Gospel of Wealth went for $8,200, exactly 1 month of the management fees she'd stolen. I didn't attend the auction. Read about it in the liquidator's online catalog, saw the final prices listed beside each lot number. Someone else could own those books now, could read Carnegie's words and draw whatever conclusions they wanted. Diane walked out of Ohio Reformatory for Women September 2021 after 12 months, 6 reduced for good behavior. She moved to Columbus, took a retail management position at a sporting goods chain for $42,000 annually. Her LinkedIn profile listed her as operations coordinator, made no mention of her MBA or real estate background. No contact with the Hendricks family. No social media presence beyond the professional networking site. The woman who'd built holdings through aggressive acquisitions now worked weekends and holidays, managing inventory and scheduling part-time employees. Mikhail remarried in Chicago that same fall, posted wedding photos on Facebook from a ceremony at the Drake Hotel. His new wife worked in commercial development, a profile showing projects across the Midwest. He'd erased Diane from his timeline completely. 3 years of marriage, replaced with photos of business conferences and vacation homes. Aunt Marie's apology came by handwritten card, 3 sentences, unsigned date. Uncle Mike called once, waited through 5 rings, asked about attending the next family gathering before the conversation went quiet. The IBEW credit union statement showed my new balance in November 2021. The court-supervised distributions had taken months to process, but the rental income from my 6 properties now deposited automatically. $23,500 monthly, same amount. Diane had stolen for 7 years. I kept living in the Kenmore Ranch. Same 1,200 square feet, same kitchen where I followed Rebecca's pierogi recipe on weekends. The only changes were a new furnace and the appliances she'd wanted to replace before she got sick. The basement workshop held 47 restored tube radios now, each one pulled from estate sales and flea markets, repaired until the circuits worked exactly as designed. Something broken made whole through patient work and proper diagnosis. The radio sat on my workbench with its back panel removed, tubes pulled and organized in the foam-lined drawer I kept for this model. November 2021. Light came through the basement window. 40-degree angle, heating a 6-inch strip of concrete where I'd spread out the schematic. The Zenith Trans-Oceanic from 1952 needed new capacitors. Previous owner had let the filter caps go bad. Whole power supply shot. I'd picked it up at an estate sale 3 weeks ago for $40, brought it home, started the rebuild. My rental income deposited automatically now. $23,500 monthly from the 6 properties. Same amount Diane had stolen for 7 years. The credit union statement stayed filed upstairs in Rebecca's system. I still lived in the Kenmore Ranch, same 1,200 square feet, but I'd replaced the furnace last spring and updated the kitchen appliances she'd wanted before she got sick. The new capacitors fit tight in their mounting brackets. I soldered each connection, checked resistance with the multimeter, verified polarity twice. Something broken, you fix it. It works. Simple. Dennis had come by for Thanksgiving last week. 2 cousins too, the ones who'd apologized after the trial. Small gathering around the dining room table. Dennis wore his Union Hall suit jacket with the frayed cuffs. My cousin Jennifer brought store-bought rolls instead of homemade. Nobody cared, just pierogies made from Rebecca's recipe and conversation that didn't need explaining. 6 months to establish the scholarship. Rebecca Hendricks, Memorial through IBEW, Local 438, $50,000, endowment funding, annual $2,500 awards for apprentice electricians' spouses pursuing administrative careers, honoring her school secretary work, her support while I pulled those double shifts. I connected the last ground wire and slid the tubes back into their sockets. Power switch clicked. The transformer hummed. Dial lights warmed from orange to yellow. Static filled the speaker. Then I tuned across the band. AM 1420 pulled in without static. Union Station running contract negotiations from the Ford plant. Reception reached Pittsburgh. Stations pulling in clean across 200 miles. I adjusted the volume, set the radio on the shelf beside Rebecca's photo. Her smile looked the same as it had in 1994 when I'd taken that picture in our kitchen. The documentation folders sat beside the frame, labeled in her careful printing. Her filing system, her labels, her protection made tangible. She'd known what was coming, preserved the evidence while dying, stood guard when she couldn't be present. Diane had walked out of prison September this year after 12 months. Retail management in Columbus now, $42,000 annually, forbidden from real estate, no contact with family. Dennis mentioned it at Thanksgiving, casual comment while passing the kielbasa. Mikhail had remarried in Chicago, erased her from his timeline. I picked up the soldering iron, reached for the next radio in the restoration queue. My fingers had electrical tape residue ground into the creases after 40 years. Stains that wouldn't wash out. The Union Station played on. Autumn light moved across the workbench. Something broken, now working exactly as designed.